12th generation in their homes and land have clear rules on what can be done, hoping to keep it affordable and appropriate as we continue to develop our city. As the PSC representative, I think the staff did a fantastic job of gathering together all of these issues through lots of emotion and lots of public testimony. You're going to get your opportunity to hear a lot of that shortly. Just to alert you of a couple things you will hear about that we didn't really include in the plan. One is the urban forest canopy and provisions for maintaining that, as we do more infill development. That's something that we have to keep a concern of. Also, land division rules for the cottage clusters to enable fee simple ownership for affordability. And then internal conversions and what can be allowed there, somewhat of respect to the historic way that we see, like over in Belmont, you see lots of big boxes that are sixplexes, but they look like giant houses. So anyway, that internal conversion rules, those are a little bit more complicated. So thank you very much, and we look forward to continuing the robust discussions and coming up with something that will really make Portland shine, and also to allow us to be a leader in a leadership position on the middle housing issue that really is striking our entire country.
Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you both for your service. On the internal conversions, does the code specify that that's only allowed if you keep the existing house?
There is, as far as I understand, there's no specificity to that because it was a topic that we started to discuss, but we really didn't get fully laid out just based on timing. You could see how many things you could put into one, we call them ADUs or detached ADUs. So that's a little different than converting something into a fourplex or whatever.
Yeah, I'm just concerned about the developer doesn't necessarily have that much incentive. It's only if you're currently living in a house to excuse me, convert it so you can maybe stay there. Otherwise, I'm not sure how that really stops the demolition, because if you can do it and build it new, that tends to be more expensive. And
Let's flag that issue and ask for testimony on that issue, and also staff discussion, because it was very much the intent that was to try to provide an incentive to keep the old building, even if the configuration of how people live inside of it changes.
I'm just concerned that actually it is an incentive, because then you can do more units and build it new. I'm not sure how that stops the scraping.
We ought to look at this.
I think that's something to look at.
That's a good question. Okay, other questions for our two stellar volunteers here? Thank you.
Thank you.
I know we have some other volunteers here, some board and commission members, and maybe other stakeholder advisory committee members that would like to speak. Please. Come on up. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me here. I'm Eli Spivak. I serve on the Planning Commission and also was on the Residential Infill Project. And my comments maybe have a little more edge because I'll speak for myself and the commission member, but I'll say that I've heard the claim that the Residential Infill Project will destroy the character of neighborhoods around Portland. And I just want to invite you that if you hear that also in testimony, I hope you'll empathize with the concerns people express, which are fair. For many people, buying a house is their big investment in life, and if things change around them, then it can feel like a threat. But I also hope that you'll think of these neighborhoods you're very familiar with and think of people who live in those neighborhoods, who teach at the neighborhood school, people who teach the neighborhood school, work at the coffee shop, clean houses, do landscaping. Do they have any chance of living in the neighborhood too? And I hope that you'll think of this code process as a way to ensure that there are places within any neighborhood for people providing those essential services to live. There's a long and fortunate history in our country of zoning used as an exclusionary tool, sometimes intentionally, sometimes not. During World War II, when we absorbed 194,000 residents in a few years for the war effort, our lowest density neighborhoods, which weren't very extensive back then, were left largely off the hook. So in the War Code, 1942 War Code, which mostly relaxed the rules of the game, you could slice and dice houses, all kinds of stuff, it had in there nice clauses like, no new building coming under the regulations of this ordinance shall be located in a Class 1 residential district or a Class 1 special two-family residential district. And if you do convert an existing building in one of those districts to multiple units, then you have to get buy-off from 60% of the people who own private property within 200 feet. That's white picket fence zoning. Our 1% zoning, as Novak coined a while ago. And we
Please
can
don't repeat that.
and we can do better than that. Now we've got 45% of our city with that same single-family zoning. Do we have a chance of meeting our equity goals if we don't allow a broader mix of housing types in our neighborhoods? As proposed by staff, they'd be required to be tucked within the size constraints of a single-family home, as staff's already shared, except that the size would be capped at 2,500 square feet, which is smaller than 59% of new single-family homes built in Portland on 5,000 square foot lots in 2013. So the size cap is less than 59% of homes getting built. I've heard the concern that if we adopt this package, every lot will get built out like corner triplexes, double ADUs, courtyard plexes. I've also heard the concern that only weird developers like me would ever build the stuff, if given the choice. I think we would end up with something in between. And we can look back to history one more time for that. If you look at the older neighborhoods of Portland, where you could by right have built every single lot with a courtyard plex, that's not what happened. We've done tours of this. We see those plexes, but there's also many single-family homes, mostly single-family homes that were built where they could have built something more intense instead. So I think what you'll see is a variety of housing types, which is exactly what we need. So I'd say the staff's done a terrific job with this code update. It could and should go further to support internal conversions of existing homes citywide, preserving urban forest canopy, and providing support for affordable and accessible housing. But I would say that what's eroding the affordability, character, and housing choices in our neighborhoods is not the RIP project, the residential info project. It's the zoning rules on the books today. And we got a chance to change them, so let's do it.
Eli, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Because you were one of the more thoughtful people that comes before us on this subject. When I joined this council, the hot subject at the time was whether we would erode the urban growth boundary to accommodate growth. And the council has historically said, no, we're going to protect the urban growth boundary because we believe in it. But we also understood we're going to have to take more people, and the question was, where do we put the density? And historically, the council has said that we could focus density in places like town centers and corridors and certain areas, while also doing our best to preserve the, quote, character of our residential neighborhoods. Now, that's a very broad proposition. And now we're trying to figure out how to accommodate enormous growth, how to deal with an affordability crisis, how to bring an equity lens, and how to balance all these things. Mm-hmm. And this is a high concept proposal before us. There's work to be done where it gets translated into action. But my sense is that we're trying to balance a number of core values. And we're trying to figure out where is the line. And do you have any further guidance for us as to how to balance our desire to protect the urban growth boundary, focus density where we can accommodate it, and protect some of the, quote, character of our more established neighborhoods?
I think this proposal does a terrific job of maintaining the character of neighborhoods. We've actually tuned down significantly the size of what can get built. What people are complaining about now is what's being built under current codes, and this changes that. And if preserving character of neighborhoods means fewer people can live in them, then I guess I'm going to disagree with that definition. I think that's a proxy for an exclusionary zoning. But if preserving character of neighborhoods means it's still got the look and feel of single-family homes, even if there's an ADU where maybe a garage would have been, then that's exactly what this proposal does. And I think that having an increased population density, and one of the things I fear is that Portland, as the further out parts get built closer to the growth boundary, that it'll be a monocrop of big single-family homes that will never have the population density it takes to support the vibrant, walkable neighborhoods that we are bidding up right now. And we need more of those neighborhoods. And the way to get those more neighborhoods is to have a mixture of housing types even further away from the core.
Eli, one discussion we've had is if the result of allowing for middle housing is a bunch of $400,000 duplexes, well, how can you consider that affordable? And isn't that kind of pointless? A counter argument would be that if the alternative is single-family homes that all cost more than $750,000, then $400,000 might not seem all that affordable, but it's a heck of a lot more affordable than $750,000. Do you have any thoughts about that argument?
I think it's relatively affordable. I mean, I think that it's not, I come from an affordable housing background. This is not getting you the affordable housing, except for in very limited ways by some nonprofits that specialize in for sale neighborhood-based housing. That really get very far down the income level. But it is valuable to have in a market that's building $750,000 homes. That's what pencils. To let them build two 400s instead, that's better. And if you can have a house that's $750,000, but it's got an ADU tucked in the corner that might be rented at a pretty affordable rate, that's better. I live right in a neighborhood where behind my house, I live in half of a duplex. There's a totally developable lot that when it gets built out, it's going to be 10 feet from my back door. And I have the middle class anxiety that that's going to, shade me out. But if something's going to get built there, I'd much rather it be something that at least part of that structure is someone who teaches at the school down the street can afford to live in. And that's not going to be the case with a $715,000 house. So I think that this tool is limited. It's not the only tool on the books, but it's an important one to allow us to have a variety of housing types.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Welcome. Pardon me. My name is Leroy Patton, and I'm president of the Fair Housing Council of Oregon. And I want to talk about the 1959 City of Portland banned multifamily dwellings, such as duplexes, fourplexes, and internal home divisions. Since 1959, City Code has made it illegal to build more neighborhoods with this classification of middle housing. This has contributed to the deep Portland housing shortage, driving the poorest Portlanders out of their homes. By being forced to move, these same families lose out on job opportunities that are available in the city. This code has been used for 60 years. It is now time to reassess its value to Portland. These small, efficient ways to live, duplexes, fourplexes, and internal home divisions, encourage the development of small stores, markets, bus line viability, and walkable neighborhoods. All Portlanders would benefit from such improvements. We urge you to support the missing middle housing amendment to the city's comprehensive plan by implementing the following regulations. Revise the zoning code to allow for middle housing types in existing residential neighborhoods. Remove the barriers to housing development of these projects. Allow more missing middle types in all Portland neighborhoods. Support rules that incentivize efficient use of smaller spaces and energy-efficient buildings. Bring more affordable housing options online for future needs. Eliminate McMansions and encourage the building of smaller houses. Land use decisions made today will directly affect housing abundance, diversity, and affordability. We need to make sure that housing reflects these values for all Portlanders. Please consider revising the 1959 City Code to accommodate the needs of all Portlanders.
Thank you. Questions? Thank you both very much. Okay, before we turn to the sign-up sheet again, we usually grant the courtesies to people with disabilities or people with small children or who have caregiver responsibilities. If you're here and fit that description, you know who you are. And if you'd like to afford yourself that privilege to come up first, come on up. Or come up as soon as you can make it to the hearing part of the room from upstairs. And while we wait for anybody that fits that description, we'll go ahead and start the sign-up sheet, please.
We have a total of 82 people signed up.
Okay.
The first three, please come on up, are Robin Harmon, Elaine Friesen-Strand, and Sam Noble. And that's 1, 2, and 3, and they'll be followed by Maggie McGann, Jim Gorder, and Michael Molinaro.
Great. So, folks, obviously, it's our goal to hear as many of you as possible. Quantity is nice, but quality is better. So if somebody has already covered your point, feel free to either forego or just second someone else's testimony. The goal of this hearing is to get the issues on the record and get a sense of how it's received in the community. So your say matters, but we'd urge you to not be repetitive.
Should we go to 2 minutes?
I think I would like to go to 2 minutes if we can all flex to that. I know you may have written your testimony to go longer, but again, in the goal of hearing as many people as possible, let's try to stick to a 2-minute limit if at all possible. Thank you. So who'd ever like to go first? I think you've got that.
My name's Robin Harmon. I spent the last year as a citizen of the city going to all of these meetings.
Thank you.
They called me the 27th member of the committee. The project goal is stated in fall of 2015, and I will read you, to ensure that new or remodeled houses are well integrated and complement the fabric of the neighborhood. We saw that morph very quickly over time. You heard about a supposedly diverse committee. If you look very carefully, It is heavily weighted with developers, builders, their lobbyists, and housing advocates. Somebody that just spoke today also and who is helping push this proposal through, happens to build the type of housing that would benefit, and is also on the Planning Commission. I was appalled to watch them group together and hijack the process and put through a very self-serving agenda and wrap it in the disguise of affordable housing, which it will not create. We all want a suitable and affordable housing, but this proposal will not create affordable housing, and it would increase demolitions and displacement dramatically. Staff was unresponsive to the public process despite extremely strong opposition voiced in public testimony. Of the 27 neighborhood associations that expressed thoughtful comments about the proposal, 27 out of 31 were strongly opposed to widespread middle housing. There has been virtually, if you look carefully at the details of this proposal, there was no attempt to respect neighborhood character. This is no grand bargain. Fully a third of the committee does not support it, and there was no compromise. I ask you to very carefully look at this and continue to work on this project, because it would be an entitlement that we have never seen before to allow density to increase on 2 R5 lots together that would increase the density by 300%. So please look very carefully at the details. You have time to get this right, but this would unleash massive demolitions. It would destroy our neighborhood of South Burlingame, which is in the line drawing. And our density was supposed to be grouped very close to centers and corridors, not this random 1/4 mile, which doesn't create walkable cities.
Thank you, Robin. Appreciate you being involved. Oh, folks, I forgot to do the ground rules. If you agree with somebody, hold up your hands or give them a thumbs up, and even negative hand gestures if you disagree with them, as long as they're polite ones, are welcome. But we try to not do applause except for visiting dignitaries and school children. So you're an important person, but you're neither a visiting dignitary nor a school child. Let me ask you some questions, Robin.
Sure.
Appreciated your point about this. As you know, this purpose of this hearing is to give guidance to the next phase of this project, not to decide the question. And as always, in something like this, the 3 choices are do this, do nothing, do something else.
Right.
And there's a consequence to each one of those. I hear you
Right.
saying that you're in the do something else or do this differently category. The more, not
Yes.
just today, but the more specificity you can give us, is 2,500 square feet the right number? Are duplexes a good idea? Are triplexes a good idea? Those details will matter as this turns into details,
Right.
assuming it goes forward. So not just today, but as we go forward, obviously, if you think this can be tuned and get closer to
Absolutely.
your ideal of what should and should not happen.
Right.
Because I think there is a high level of agreement about what we want and what we don't want. We want to preserve the great old houses. We don't want them demolished thoughtlessly and replaced with generic boxes. We want to accommodate different household sizes and so on. So
Right.
I think there's a lot of agreement, but obviously the devil's in the details. And
The devil is in the
details
details.
matter. So keep that
Right.
coming, please.
Well,
I
and
know you've
there's a
been to 27 meetings.
allowed
But
on every corner now, and the city's own studies show adequate land for the next 20 years of our growth. And we're not building on the land that's already zoned for multi and single-family residential. And so we need to explore that before opening up the whole city. It would take away anybody's sense of truth and zoning in single-family residential neighborhoods. So please continue working. The third of the committee opposed to this has put together a very well-balanced proposal that meets all of the goals of new residents, existing residents, and also looks at affordability. And I urge you please to review that carefully.
Okay,
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very
Can I ask
much.
a question, Mayor? Mr. Harmon, I just want to ask you sort of a question of preference. You might say you don't like either of them, but I'd like you to see if you have an answer as to which is more or less preferable. Would it be worse, in your view, to replace a single-family 2,000 square foot house with a $3,500 square foot mansion or with two 1,250 square foot duplexes? Which of those do you think is more disruptive of the neighborhood?
I think it depends. It depends on, is there infrastructure in that neighborhood to accommodate the kind of growth? In our neighborhood, it's not very well served by mass transit, even though it's within the quarter mile. So it might be more appropriate in one situation. That's why we have to look more closely at neighborhoods, because it might be better than cramming a lot of people in there that just would not be well served, and it's not a walkable neighborhood. And I think we need to also not look at one duplex. Right now, a duplex can be on any corner, but if you're demolishing a lot of single-family residential, it could turn a single-family residential home into primarily rental housing, because there's no limit on this. This isn't saying it's going to be discreetly sprinkled in the neighborhoods like is being espoused by some.
So
Well, you could make the argument that discrete sprinkling has worked out in that we've allowed ADUs over a large swath of the city.
Right.
And we've allowed the corner duplexes over a large swaths of the city. We've left it to property owners to decide when and if that happens, and it's only happened at a rather modest rate.
Right, so how much need is there for it?
Well, but
It's a question
the
mark.
need's determined by the market and the ultimate growth of the city, but
Right.
the when and where and how is determined by
Right.
the property owner.
The 2,500 square feet for a 5,000 square foot lot is misleading, like quite a bit that's in here, in my opinion, and that it doesn't count garages, and it doesn't count an ADU, I believe, up to 800 square feet. So we all get this picture in our mind of half of the lot being yard, and that's not at all the case.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you very much. Please keep it coming.
Thank you for the
Thank
extra
you.
time.
Bet. Go ahead.
Mayor Hales, Commissioners, thank you for this opportunity to testify. My name is Elaine Friesen-Strang. My husband and I have been long-term residents in Northeast Portland. In fact, our kids went to the same public schools that my husband did, and it is our hope that we're going to continue to live there as we get older. I'm here today as a volunteer state president for AARP Oregon, and I'm here on behalf of the 65,000 AARP members we have in this city. We believe the report is headed in the right direction. We support the goals of expanding housing choices in terms of size and types of homes, encouraging walkable communities while prioritizing the preservation of neighborhood character. However, there is no provision to foster increased stock of accessible housing. Without adequately addressing this issue, the proposed recommendations cannot make for an effective plan to guide the future development in a city that meets the needs of all its residents. 90% of people age 65 and older want to remain in their own homes as they get older. But if a move becomes necessary because their home is no longer safe or because it doesn't meet their needs, they should not be forced to leave their community, abandon their social networks, or live in age-segregated communities simply because there aren't any other options. And for those who rent, finding homes that are built or remodeled with universal design principles is near impossible. In the next 15 years, our region is expected to see a 106 growth in people aged 65 and older, compared to a projected 35% growth in the other population. And according to CDC, over a third of adults aged 65 and older and 22% of adults report some disability. The truth is, each of us may experience some disability in our lifetime, whether it be from an accident or a mobility challenge caused by a chronic condition. AARP supports the recommendations made by Dr. Alan De La Torre to enact regulatory and incentive-based policies that increase the stock of accessible housing. Please consider examples by other jurisdictions that have already enacted policies, such as Rogue Valley Council of Government, the Montgomery County in Maryland, the City of Austin, and the New York Township of Babylon. This is our chance to meet the needs of all our residents. AARP thanks you for your continued commitment to making Portland a great place for people of all ages and abilities.
Elaine,
Very
can I just
much.
ask you a follow-up? And we're
Yes.
going to try to get through everybody, so we'll start curbing our inclination here. But do you have any suggestions for us in terms of going deeper in requiring levels of accessibility? Because we've received some testimony from allies of AARP, saying that this is the opportunity to actually
Right.
bake into our code more requirements about accessibility.
You're going to hear this afternoon more from Dr. Alan De La Torre to go into that, but I would encourage you to look at what some of these other jurisdictions are doing. The city of Austin, in 2014, their city council approved changes to city building codes to make new homes accessible. Montgomery County has grants and loans to seniors for home modifications. There are tax incentives, expedited permitting, reduction in waiver and fees, flexibility in setbacks. There's lots of things to consider.
So let me make a plea, and if Alan's in the queue, we'll hear from him, but I would welcome something in writing that laid out a menu of options, including cities you want us to look at, because I think now is the time to to put this into the concept plan that we give to the staff to flesh out. I wouldn't want to miss this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Mayor Hales. My name is Sam Noble. I lived in the Buckman neighborhood for a decade next to a fourplex and 2 duplexes, and it wasn't scary. It wasn't a big deal. I had personal relationships with many of the people who lived in those structures. That kind of mild density helped support the vibrant, walkable neighborhood that Buckman is and has been for some time. And I don't see any reason that these things shouldn't be legal basically everywhere in the city. That's a duplex with a detached ADU, as this proposal suggests, or even go further. And that's every lot in the city. When I have kids, I want to know that they have a place in Portland that isn't necessarily a small apartment in a big building. I'd like them to have some more options, something a little quieter. I try to get more detail into my written testimony when I submit it. Hasn't come in yet. I want to say that the only aspects of this proposal that I find really objectionable at all is that I think the allowed floor area ratio is just a little too low. I think maybe it ought to be closer to 0.8, 0.7, something in that range. And that's just because I think that there's a very vocal portion of this community that feels like we need more modesty in our buildings. And as kind of a personal value, I don't think that that's a thing that we should be imposing on people, that you have to build a small house because this neighborhood was built for less wealthy people than the people who built in that other neighborhood, something like that. It feels wrong to me. The other thing that I'd really like to see that you guys do is to make sure that parking doesn't end up competing with living space for people. My reading of the latest proposal is that floor area, if it's above ground, that's garage space, that's living space, whatever. And, parking's expensive to build, and if somebody's willing to pay for it, and as a driver, I am and have been, I'd like that to not compete. I think if you're going to build a detached garage in your yard, as I have, you ought to be able to put a little apartment above it and not feel like you're having to choose between the two. And I'm building one of these today, and I think that it's going to be a great little use of land, and it's going to leave me some ground space to have a garden and still be able to keep my cars off the street.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
I forgot, I've got a
Please,
written
yeah, just leave it with Carla and she'll make copies for us. Or if you already have, that's good. That's fine. Thank you very much.
The next 3 are Maggie McGann, Jim Gorder, and Michael Molinaro. And they'll be followed by Mary Ann Schwab, and then number 8, Barbara Strunk. And I believe Sarah Canteen is not speaking till the 16th. Is that correct?
Okay,
Thank
welcome.
you. And then Bob Wyatt will be in that other group.
Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Maggie McGann. I am also one of the members of the Residential Infill Committee. I was on as a representative for Habitat for Humanity and a lifelong Sunnyside resident. I'm a little nervous because I've never done this before.
You're doing fine.
So I was nervously looking forward to being here today, but I think in the face of the election last night, it became hard, and feels like we're just in the details, but I told myself that we're here and I'm here because, as Secretary Clinton said, it's not just a detail, it's your family, and it's a big deal. So creating more housing opportunities for Portland families who get bid out over and over again, 8 times, 10 times, 15 offers is a big deal. It's a big deal to fight for economic diversity throughout our city and throughout our neighborhoods. The infill proposal creates important housing choices, new important housing choices for Portlanders. Creating more diverse housing options means more type of people can live in our neighborhoods and throughout our city. Last night, I was able to celebrate a silver lining of the election with a number of you as we passed the affordable housing bond. It was an amazing and important accomplishment. I think that this infill proposal is also an important part of our package for housing solutions in the city. I think it will provide a broader array of housing choices for a broader array of Portlanders. I also would like to see it go farther. I think there are ways that we can support, we have opportunities to directly promote affordable housing in this as well. But the bottom line is we need more choice between mid-rise studio apartments and large single-family homes, often for only a single person. We need homes for families, we need homes for seniors, we need affordable homes. We can move toward those goals by allowing people access to our neighborhoods for our teachers and nurses. As for Habitat, have built for 9 years, I've built 12 to 1,300 square foot duplexes for families. This can work for our families. I'm a lifelong Portlander, like everyone else in the city. I see that the city is changing. Portland is rising. We need to make sure it's a place that rises, that everyone can rise, and it's a big deal and not a detail.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Jim Gorter. I was a member of the Residential Infill Stakeholder Advisory Committee. And I'm speaking today on behalf of a group calling itself the RIPSAC 7, a coherent and cohesive third of the RIPSAC appointees. The extensive written testimony you'll receive today represents the group's positions and lists the names of the RIPSAC 7 members. You will hear from them today and next week in person. We embrace the mayor's concerns about demolitions, inappropriate infill, and affordability, but we reject many portions of the concept report. We do have some recommendations. Among them are, first, create development typologies that fit the neighborhood context and aspirations and ensure that the scale of houses fits neighborhood context. One size does not fit all neighborhoods. Develop strategies that directly reduce demolitions. Second, direct density and middle housing around centers consistent with the comprehensive plan. Test the middle housing ideas in areas that have expressed need and support before expanding to other parts of the city. Drop the unprecedented widespread use of the housing opportunity overlay. It is deceptive and no substitute for good planning and zoning. Third, allow confirmation of historic underlying lot lines only in contiguous R2.5 zones. We care deeply about our city, and we applaud the effort to consider how and where to focus housing density and how to guide the growth of the city in a period of rapid change. The residential infill project was a promising start that ultimately ran entirely off the rails. If the concern is affordability, the project is a false promise. If the concern is equitable housing access in every neighborhood, this was never an infill project objective and is a false promise. If the concern is a more walkable, livable, lively city, this is a false promise. If the concern is a reduction of house size, this is a false promise. And finally, if it's an attempt to reduce demolitions, no, it will not do that.
Thank you. Thank you very much again. We look forward to getting your written testimony with specifics.
Right there.
Right.
Good afternoon. I'm Michael Molinaro. I was part of the Residential Infill Committee, and I too am part of the SAC 7. Centers and corridors. This is the planning precept that we were all asked to embrace during the recent comprehensive planning process. Why? Because it's a good one. It encourages growth near transit, services, and jobs. The comprehensive plan uses this phrase 49 times. Maps are dedicated to it. I know this concept works because I live in Sunnyside, through which run vibrant corridors, and it is the center that is the poster child for walkable neighborhoods. Instead of this infill plan following the comp plan centers and corridors, it blankets the city with a zoning density greater than the R2 multifamily zones. This is unusual, as we have heard again and again that there is enough existing capacity to welcome the next 20 years of Portland's growth. And at your work session last week, staff again reinforced this. We support additional density around centers and, where appropriate, along corridors. We do not support the scattershot densification proposed in this plan. In my own Sunnyside, I encourage changing zoning from R2.5 to R2 along sections of Hawthorne and Belmont to allow the missing middle housing that we all know is needed. This request fell on deaf ears. These locations at end-grain blocks and adjacent to major streets are exactly where planner Daniel Perolik advocates. In his speech on October 7th, he stated, "Missing middle is not for everywhere." This advice is clearly ignored in this plan. At Council's February 2nd Missing Middle work session, the idea of testing 7 targeted areas as missing middle housing study areas was presented. See attached map. We encourage you to act on this suggestion and test these infill concepts to see if they deliver the hoped-for results.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your work on this. Thank you.
The next 3 are Marianne Schwab, Barbara Strunk, and Bob Wyatt. That's 8 and 10. And after them will be 11, 12, and 13, Ruth Adkins, Nick Sovey, and Mary Kyle McCurdy.
Good afternoon, welcome. Who's on first? Go ahead, Mary Ann.
Thank you. My name is hello, everyone. For the record, my name is Mary Ann Schwab. I'm a community advocate, and I appreciate the time we're taking to review this, and I have some questions about process. For the record, I attended 4 of the 6 residential open houses scheduled between June 15th and August 15th, when most ONI coalitions and neighborhood associations do not meet. While I can't speak to how many coalitions and neighborhood association boards and land use transportation committees were able to review and take action on the residential infill initial report, let alone the last-minute bait-and-switch shenanigans by the Portland for Everyone Thousand Friends of Oregon program. Granted, I was taken by surprise when invited to attend their Portland for Everyone's work session to assist their supporters prepare talking points for today and next week. Actually, I felt blindsided, and maybe you did too. I did watch your work session. I don't remember any of these last-minute shenanigans in your first work session. Historically, when city council chambers have standing room only, citizens are invited to return the following week. I trust you will keep the sign-in sheets available for newcomers wishing to testify on Wednesday, November 16th. I'm also asking you to schedule a second work session to review the testimony today and on the 16th. The residential infill concept report represented by the 7, I support them 100%, and I'm asking you, please don't rezone us. And just a second ago, you heard people about parking and overflow parking. I live within a block of 106 units. Today, I could not get out of my driveway. A car was blocking it. And early this morning, there was a furnace company blocking my driveway. The overflow parking must be addressed. And the developer by right on these remnant lots, the tip of the iceberg is Peacock Lane. My heart is broken that the Grinch will be stealing Christmas by adding a cereal box between 2 1925 English-style cottages. This is wrong. And if this is the example and you're going to be changing our neighborhoods like this, it's a mortal sin. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Hi. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Barbara Strunk. I am the United Neighborhoods for Reform representative on the residential infill project. The assertion that this proposal will provide affordable housing does not hold up to close analysis. Increasing density or upzoning is the center of this proposal and will cause land prices to go up even further. Current land price in Inner East Side is between $400,000 and $800,000 per lot. With the cost of land acquisition so high, there is no formula that can produce housing units affordable to houses making less than 100% of the median family income. A builder can outbid a family for a house to be demolished and further increase the gap between those with plenty of money and those without enough money to buy a house. In my neighborhood over the last 3 years, the average price of a demolished house that was replaced by 2 or more houses was $466,000. The average land cost per new unit was $264,000. The average price of a new house in this same group, more than 2 units, 2 units or 3 units replacing a single house, was $738,000. We need analysis like this of the current state of the market to be done by the city. I have not seen that yet. Don't rely on the market to make things turn out okay. With this proposal, the city has given up all planning. This proposal is simply deregulation that allows the imperfect market to determine the future of our neighborhoods. Analysts have stated that the current reason we have a housing crisis is that we trust in the private market to solve the problem. Increased supply does not lead to more affordable housing. One of the underlying themes of this proposal is that if we rezone our inner city and allow for higher density in single-family neighborhoods, we will have more supply of affordable houses. We debate that assertion. Analysts debunk the theory that construction of additional housing units will relieve pressure on affordability. A UC Berkeley study states that it will take 30 years to produce affordable housing to the first-time home buyer. Trickle-down economics has failed in the housing market. Duplexes and triplexes are primarily rental housing. Resident owners will be displaced. Portland will transition to a city of investor owners and renters. The idea that house sizes will be smaller needs to be taken a look at. The proposal states that a house on a 5,000 square foot lot will be limited to 2,500 square feet. When you think about it, the house is actually closer to 4,000 square feet. You have 2,500 square feet for the main house, 1,200 square feet for the basement, and a 15% bonus for density, more like 4,000 square feet. So that really needs to be taken a close look at.
So I'm going to ask you to wrap up, but I also have a question for you, so.
Okay. The most affordable houses are the ones already standing, and many of the existing homes are smaller than any of the new ones. We must address the housing affordability issue as a regional issue with care and urgency, not as an excuse to provide a handout of speculative profits to developers at the cost of demolition, displacement, and livability.
So let me pose a question, and don't need to answer it now, but given the sort of the disparate view of this process that we've heard already in this hearing from 2 different groups within the committee, and that's fine. We don't have to reach perfect consensus ever. It's certainly not at this stage of the process, and it's okay that there's a diversity of opinion about this. But if you go back to the staff's presentation about the goals of this project, one was to address scale. And I'm not, by the way, in asking these questions and talking about this, I'm not assuming that the proposal in front of us is right. I'm assuming it's going in the right direction, but that it needs perhaps tuning. That's my working assumption. So we're going to deal with, we're trying to deal with scale, we're trying to deal with housing choice, and we're trying to deal with narrow lots. Those are the 3 topic areas. And yet, listening to this presentation, particularly when you talk about affordability and others talk about housing choice, I'm actually assuming we're looking at both issues of affordability and housing choice, and those are both good ideas, and that we don't necessarily always address both in any given housing type. Back to Steve's question about, isn't 2 $400,000 houses better than 1 $700,000 house? Well, we don't have to get hypothetical about this. Let me tell you about 3 real houses in Portland. One of them, and they're all in a great old Portland neighborhood. One of them had a single woman in it whose children had grown and moved out, and who'd just gone through a divorce. One had a couple in their middle years whose kids had all flown the coop and gone off and done their thing. And the third had a family with 3 teenage and college-age kids in it. The divorced woman moved into the couple's house, And they also accommodated a Portland State student living in a bedroom in the basement. There are 2 cars in that household, and all the working people in that household ride transit. The family next door has 4 cars. So I would submit that we gave some housing choice to our neighbor who's living in the upstairs of our house, and to the Portland State student who's living in our basement, and that we have less of a transportation impact than our neighbors with the teenage kids that own cars. So this is partly about housing choice. Obviously, the couple that accommodated those folks, and by the way, we didn't remodel the house, and if we did, we'd get permits. We're just having people living in the bedrooms for now. But, we have a de facto arrangement there that these provisions could allow us to remodel and make permanent. Not likely to happen in our case, because the Portland State student's going to graduate and go to New York, and Laurel bought a house in Milwaukee. But you see my point. This is about housing choice, not just about affordability. So I'm hearing these concerns about transportation, and I'm hearing these concerns about affordability, and they're legitimate, but I'm not sure that the constellation of housing choices is all that correlative to some of those questions, either of affordability or of transportation impact. So I'd like to hear more from the RIPSAC 7 group about those issues.
Well, what we have done is divided up the issues, so you will hear more.
Yeah, good, thank you. Please.
Good afternoon. My name is Bob Mile, and as you probably realize, I'm an immigrant. I only joined this because I wanted to talk about fairness. And I've lived in 3 countries and in 7 cities. I used to join in a line in the country I came from, which is a line where food stamps were parlayed. So I've been at the bottom and I've been near the top. And so this is a very important issue, fairness. So when I looked at all the material that was available, I thought I'd do it a different way around. I'll look, first of all, is this material being fair to the developers? I read through it, and I read through it, and I read through it again. It is being more than fair to the developers. At one time, I thought it was written by them, but it is being very fair to them. The next thing, the housing opportunity overlay. I thought it was draconian. Why draconian? Because Draco was a legislature in Greece, and if somebody did something he didn't want, he had them put to death. That's the way he worked. And I think this is true as presented with this housing opportunity overlay, but I hear it's been moderated from what's been said today. But I also think that it has some merit if it's used in the appropriate way and not everywhere. Using it everywhere, opening up to every part of the city is not the way it should go. For instance, would it not make sense where people are complaining about gentrification to do something in their area, to put in housing that would be suitable to be bought by that group? Turning to affordability. How are we going to control affordability? I hear 400,000 twice or 750,000. That's huge amounts of money. How many people can buy a house like that? Is there not, in your purview, a way of legislating or even asking developers to do so much of their building at a cost that is far less? Is there a way to do that?
Yes,
I
we're
would
about
press
to.
you to look at it.
Yes, we're actually about to do that. It's called inclusionary housing.
Okay, good. Well, I don't understand all this. As I say, I'm just a private citizen that's looked at these things. There's a group that's called Portland for Everybody. I take a little bit of a jaundiced view of that. All of us that come up today will be talking about a Portland for everybody. It's not just that group. They're wearing a little lapel badge that says, I love housing choice. So do we all. All the people in the neighborhoods are there because that's where they chose to be. And why could they be there? Because they worked hard, they saved, and they became there, and they don't want it changed too much. But most of them will have some change and not feel badly about it.
I want to ask you to wrap up soon, please.
Okay, I will do. I'll wrap up now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your thoughts. Thank you. Thank you all.
The next three are Ruth Adkins, Nick Sovey, and Mary Kyle McCurdy. That's 11, 12, and 13, and they'll be followed by Paul Grove, Leslie Hammond, and Dylan Lamar, 14, 15, and 16.
Good afternoon. Welcome. I think you're first, Ruth.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. Thank you for your leadership. So for the record, my name is Ruth Adkins. I'm with Oregon Opportunity Network. We're a statewide association of affordable housing and community development nonprofits with 20 members here in the Portland area. I want to here to express our strong support for this proposal. And our members, who are experienced mission-driven nonprofits, are eager to help shape this policy as it moves forward to maximize rental and homeownership options in all parts of Portland, not just the centers and corridors. The families our members serve are currently shut out of nearly every neighborhood in Portland. We need every possible tool to help address Portland's housing crisis. We believe that duplexes and garden apartments can absolutely coexist harmoniously with single-family homes, and why not support gentle infill like Granny Flats? We need all types and all sizes of housing in all price ranges, and this proposal is an important part of the solution to our housing crisis. I also want to express my support personally as someone who's been a homeowner in Portland since 1988, currently living in the southwest neighborhood of Hillsdale. Longtime homeowners like myself have nothing to fear from this proposal. On the contrary, I strongly believe it will improve the fabric and the character of our neighborhoods and our community. Those of us who have adult children who are saddled with college debt, maybe a smaller, flexible housing option might make first-time homeownership a possibility for them so they can stay here in Portland where they were born. Many of us hoping to downsize into retirement would benefit from senior-friendly options like a granny cottage or a duplex or a flat within a larger home. Most important, I want to share the privilege of living in our wonderful Portland neighborhoods. I don't want to see families or renters or people of color excluded from our neighborhoods. Missing middle housing is an important part of the solution for our city's growth, so please support this thoughtful, sensible proposal so we can move forward to a Portland that is welcoming and accessible for all. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Nick Sovey. I'm owner of a couple homes in Kearns and in Woodstock, and I support the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability's residential infill design standards. Updating the city's zoning and development standards to allow plexes, row houses, and courtyard housing is an important step that will lead to development of more missing middle housing. These standards should apply across the city and not only in corridors. According to the Portland Housing Bureau's 2015 State of Housing in Portland report, home sale price inflation in East Portland has been the most rapid in the city. From 2011 to 2014, home price inflation in East Portland districts was as follows. Lentz Foster, 60.7%. Park Rose Argay, 41.5%. Pleasant Valley, 41.4%. 122nd and Division, 38.2%. These were the four highest price inflation districts in the entire city. This demonstrates that the housing affordability crisis is hitting hardest at the lower half of the market. Today, 80% of the residentially zoned land in Portland is reserved for single-family development. Limiting the supply of land available for moderately dense development is a simple supply and demand issue. Limiting supply will drive up costs. Creating more missing middle housing options is an important tool for addressing the housing affordability crisis in Portland. The housing bond that passed last night is an important step in that direction. I thank all of you for your efforts on that behalf. Permitting a greater diversity of options within the vast majority of residential zones is another. I hope City Council will take that step. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor Hales and members of the City Council. My name is Mary Kyle McCurdy. I represented 1,000 Friends of Oregon on the Residential Infill Project Stakeholder Advisory Committee. Initially, I was not confident that our diverse group would reach a consensus on much, but after 15 months of frequent and long meetings, many walking tours, summer of open houses, surveys, and meetings with community-based organizations, 2/3 of your Stakeholder Advisory Committee reached consensus on all three of the integrated topics presented to you. And that group represents nonprofit affordable housing providers, disability rights advocates, home builders, community-based groups, neighborhood associations, and more. My comments today are going to focus on one issue. The residential infill project fills in a significant gap in Portland's housing supply by providing smaller housing choices throughout our neighborhoods that are relatively more affordable for more of Portland's families. You will hear that Portland has plenty of zoned capacity for housing. However, as data from many sources shows, Portland has a gap of about 25 to 30% in the demand for and supply of smaller single-family and attached housing choices, the missing middle. That is needed in more neighborhoods, more closer in, and the lack of that is what's driving up our housing costs. Almost 2/3 of Portland's families are 1 and 2 person households. The 45% of the residential area zoned for single-family housing doesn't meet their needs. And not every family of a parent and a child or a single retired person wants to live on the 4th floor along Division or in a downtown tower. The RIP proposal delivers family housing in family neighborhoods at a scale that meets the needs of more Portlanders. You'll also hear that the RIP proposal will not provide housing affordable to Portlanders. The economic report commissioned by you shows this to not be true. By reducing the scale of new dwellings and allowing more missing middle housing, the economic report demonstrates that more affordable housing will be provided. And you'll hear that the RIP should only apply to a narrow band around corridors and centers. Portland has always prided itself on being a welcoming community for all, and that means adapting to changing families and those of different economic, social, and racial backgrounds. This is not the time to shut some people out of some neighborhoods. The housing decisions you make are for the long term and should not be limited to today's transit routes, retail nodes, and a 1950s notion of a single-family zone. We need to evolve to reflect our changing family sizes and configurations, increased opportunities for duplexes, ADUs, triplexes, all within the same size structure as a single-family home allows intergenerational living, aging in one's community, and homes for 1 and 2 person households. We urge you to adopt the proposal before you and direct your staff to go further to provide additional flexibility for affordability, tree preservation, and accessibility. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question. I know we're going to hear from some disability rights activists later, but you said the disability folks supported this. What in it do you feel is helpful for people with disabilities?
Commissioner Fritz and I should let Ellen De La Torre, who was on our the RIPSAC, can address that directly. It provides, so I don't want to put words in the mouth of the person who is representing that, but it provides more smaller housing options for those of a variety of ages and 1 person households, people as they get older, in all neighborhoods. It allows people, right now in my neighborhood, there are no smaller options. There are larger single family homes. To age in my neighborhood and downsize to a smaller unit is impossible unless you want to live in your child's ADU or rent out your ADU, but there are no smaller housing options. So it serves those as they age to be able to stay in the community with the places and the people they know and the services they know. And I'll let Alan discuss he can talk more about that.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
The next 3 are Paul Grove, Leslie Hammond, and Dylan Lamar. That's 14, 15, 16. And they'll be followed by Mary Vogel, Sheila Greenlow-Fink, and Julia Metz, 17, 18, and 19.
Okay. Welcome.
Thank you. Mayor Hales, Commissioner, for the record, Paul Grove with the Portland Home Builders. I appreciate the opportunity to testify today. I will try to be brief. I know it's been a long day and you have a lot of other folks here. And I'm here in support of the draft concept and believe it's headed in the right direction. As Mary Kyle pointed out, there was some skepticism at the start of this process, and there was builder-developer representation from our association. You had the nonprofit communities out there. You had neighborhood groups. And I think what was enlightening for our members, who you will hear from either today or at the next public meeting, was that there was a lot more in common with folks in trying to address this issue than they ultimately realize, and in part of a working, what we think is a durable coalition around housing issues moving forward. And so I think, Mayor Hales, kudos to you for putting together such a diverse group of folks that had the city's best interests at heart. And it was not an easy process. It was a lot of time, energy, and effort, at times contentious, having watched some of the meetings. But at the end of the day, folks rallied around the issue, and a lot of the talk focused around affordability, focused around inventory and supply. And I would encourage the commission to look at the economics report and dive into what Johnson Economics has put forward. It's a very compelling document, and I would go further and ask Jerry to come present before council if he was willing, because I think it lays out a very cogent argument as to the issues. So I think it's really important at the end of the day for council to keep the momentum going on this front. When you can sit there and have 1,000 Friends, some neighborhood groups, nonprofit community, Opportunity Network, and the home builders of the Portland area all together, trying to work together on these issues, the last thing we want to see is that momentum stalled. So we do have an urgent issue in front of us. We don't want to lose that momentum. We think this is a great start point to keep that conversation moving and address this issue for not just today, but the future generation of Portlanders. It's very important that our kids, my kid, has an opportunity to live in this city. So thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. My name's Leslie Hammond, and I have never been here before.
Welcome.
Thank you. And up until about 6 months ago, I was a big fan of the city. I've always found city employees to be very respectful and helpful whenever they were doing anything on the street or making changes to the houses, whatever. So they left a terrific impression. But within the last 6 months, I've been looking at the infill residential project and have been getting more and more alarmed by it. Now, I will tell you, so I don't take up too much time, that I would agree with Mrs. Schwab, Mrs. Strunk, Jim, I don't remember what his last name was. The point of view that they presented is my point of view, and also is probably the point of view of my neighborhood. I live over in the Multnomah neighborhood, and I'm involved there. So you've asked for specific comments about what would work. I'm very concerned about density in the sense that when people buy single-family residential houses, they have a sense of who their neighbors are. They're going to have a neighbor on each side. We all have gotten used to duplexes or triplexes on the corners, and that's been no problem. What I am very worried about is interleaving duplexes into residential streets for a couple reasons. One is a single-family homeowner buys their house, invests in it, usually keeps it up and beautifies it. I have lived next to apartment complexes and duplexes, and I can tell you that those owners are interested in getting income from the houses. They don't necessarily landscape, they don't improve things, and they basically can, not always, pull down the values of the whole street because of what they do. So I do not want to see duplexes and triplexes get interleaved in the neighborhoods. Second thing I'd say, if you are determined to do this with some refinement, I would suggest you do it in the 4 neighborhoods that it said they'd like to be the pilot neighborhoods. Do that for 5 or 7 years, then go back to those neighborhoods and see what they have to say about the effect of it. It is a trickle kind of effect. These neighborhoods will be built in different ways and slowly, and you'll get a sense of what's going to happen. We don't have the transportation, especially in the Multnomah neighborhood, to make it a completely walkable neighborhood. We only have a bus that comes through the neighborhood once in a while. We don't even have a bus after 9 o'clock at night. We don't have the MAX. We don't have the trolley. So by pushing density into it and approving apartment buildings and housing where they don't have to put off-street parking in, you're creating a real problem and congestion over there, and I'm sure that's true in other neighborhoods. So the other thing that's really important, and other people have said, is retaining the character of the neighborhood. In other words, really talking with the neighborhood associations about what they feel strongly about, what they see is the character of their neighborhood, and then work on developing a development plan that honors that, but isn't, stuck in the past. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Dylan Lamar. I rent a duplex apartment in Southeast Clinton at 25th. It's in the block, so I like walking and biking to work and the grocery stores down the street. I use my aging car about once a week, and when it dies, I won't need to replace it. My duplex is an example of missing middle housing, and it's the reason my neighborhood is so walkable. It provides the critical mass density that can support the local ice cream shop and restaurants right down the street. It would also be illegal to build today. As a residential architect in Portland, I'm well aware of this. I see daily how the application of single-family zoning has overly constrained and degraded our historic, walkable, mixed-use neighborhoods. Single-family zoning is not what gave us our historic neighborhoods that we love so much. In 2013, my company designed Ankeny Row, a modest 6-unit courtyard housing development of duplexes and townhouses with no off-street parking. That's how we got to keep the courtyard. We didn't have a parking lot. It has been applauded by neighborhood residents and highly publicized. There are also historic examples like Ankeny Row throughout all of the most loved neighborhoods in the city. Despite this, Ankeny Row is nearly illegal in 80% of the housing area of Portland. My clients had to pay top dollar for the property that their dream could be built on. That's part of the reason we had to wait nearly 2 years before we were able to do another project like it, despite receiving an overwhelming number of inquiries. Single-family zoning was created across America out of a desire for socioeconomic segregation. It is exclusionary by nature and is highly dependent on the car and car parking. Single-family zoning did not give rise to the historic Portland neighborhoods we know and love. My family and my clients are willing to deal with some parking congestion in order to enjoy living in a walkable, socially diverse neighborhood, which, by the way, supports a way of life that can end climate change. Nobody takes a vacation to the suburbs. They vacation in historic, culturally rich, walkable neighborhoods. They might complain about parking there, but they don't have to get in a car if they don't want to. Let's get back to creating the kinds of neighborhoods where we don't have to get in a car if we don't want to.
Thank you. Ankeny Row's at 21st in Ankeny?
About 25th, southeast.
Yeah, 25th. Okay, I know the project.
And where do you park your aging car?
We actually have a driveway that is meant to be more of like a loading zone that the original idea was to park 2 tandem smart cars in that would be car shared by the co-housing 7-unit community. We've fought tremendously to get through the zoning regulations to make that happen. It just doesn't fit in the rules. So it was difficult to make happen.
Thank you.
Yeah, because actually you can't park a car that is supposed to be moved every 24 hours. So if you don't have a place to park it off the street, then it'd be a problem, wouldn't you?
Right. There wasn't an off-street parking requirement, so this was above and beyond. This was providing mostly a place where they could pull in, unload groceries, and then go park the car.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
The next 3 are Mary Vogel, Sheila Greenlow Fink, and Julia Metz, that's 17, 18, and 19. And then we'll go with Ted Labby, who has a daycare issue, Al Ellis, and David Scholhammer, 20 and 21.
Okay. Welcome. Mary, I think you're first.
Okay, so my name is Mary Vogel, and as a planning consultant who usually focuses her energy on the central city, I want to address why we need the mix of uses suggested in the residential infill project. I will also suggest several improvements that should be made to the current proposal. Of the 4 large cities on the West Coast from San Francisco north, Portland is the least dense. And I have a chart in my testimony that shows the population densities and all. The city of Portland takes up almost 4 times as much space as the cities of San Francisco and Vancouver, yet has a lower population, resulting in an average population density less than many suburbs. It's about a quarter of the density of San Francisco and Vancouver, just about half of Seattle's. A density of 6,400 people per square mile equates to 10 people per acre. However, population density matters for Portland if we are to support both our historic commercial districts and to add the additional 20-minute neighborhoods we claim we want in the Climate Action Plan. More people on a given block leads to more customers, which leads to more variety in local services, which leads to a convenient lifestyle on foot or transit, which leads to building a happy city. I can't recommend this book enough. It's fabulous. You can't provide enough densities to support a beloved commercial node much less build new retail nodes with single-family homes alone. We need to increase the overall density to at least 16 units per acre needed to support thriving retail. It is important to note that 16 units per acre is also the typical recognized minimum density needed for a place to be transit supportive. So I strongly support the housing choice recommendations in the residential infill project. In terms of recommendations, I've never understood why a city that is largely without alleys requires off-street parking. Curb cuts for private driveways should be taxed rather than required because they usurp at least one parking space per unit in the public realm. So I especially want to support the last point of Portlanders for Parking Reform, an organization founded by largely run by young people. The young people we should be planning for, by the way.
Thank you very much. If you can
okay.
send us anything else like that, but that particular suggestion is very helpful. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Mayor Hales and councilors. My name is Sheila Greenlaw Fink, and I reside at 628 Southwest Chestnut Street in the Hillsdale neighborhood. I know many of you enjoy the amenities and transit-friendly area that I live in, and I thank you for this opportunity to weigh in on the city's residential infill project. While we know that addressing our regional problems and those that are concentrated in the city are going to take a lot of different tools, I'm really excited about this one. I live just off Barber Boulevard and have access to great schools, again, incredible transit access, an amazing tree canopy, and walking to grocery stores, everything one could want in a neighborhood. And I would love to see more affordable options integrated into the neighborhood. I see activity under our current zoning. Probably a McMansion will go in next door on a lot, joining an 1890s farmhouse. And I'd rather see something else, frankly. We've got a lot of houses in that price range, and it would be great to have seen a cluster or maybe duplex, triplex, something else. So under the new zoning, I'm hopeful that we'll see more developers looking at different options and opportunities to bring a variety of housing choices into our neighborhoods. I think it's past time that we update the city's vision for the 21st century, and notably by looking back to what we knew was true so long ago when we did build really charming and a little bit denser neighborhoods. So we can learn a lot from the past. It'll help us address our significant supply side gap and also assist us with demand side pricing options. As a resident of an amazing neighborhood, I hope that you'll help us ensure that more households can join us in the future in such a high quality of life, and really appreciate what you've done in a variety of ways. But through this project, I know the work will continue, and I'll provide more detailed comments in writing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Julianne Metz, and I'm here on behalf of Portland Community Reinvestment Initiatives, or PCRI, to support this proposal. For over 20 years, PCRI has stood for providing affordable, stable homes for the community. We currently have over 700 affordable homes dispersed throughout North and Northeast Portland. This includes a mix of housing types that is reflective of the missing middle that the residential infill proposal looks to provide. Because of this, PCRI has seen firsthand just how valuable homes of this size can be, especially when dispersed throughout the greater community. It has allowed PCRI to meet the diverse needs of the people we serve, from families to the elderly and beyond. Housing choices that fall between single-family homes and apartments can also help address the historical inequities of access to self-sufficiency by providing homeownership opportunities. But we know there is still a shortage of housing choices in Portland. Currently, minimum lot sizes and density limitations constrain the number of homes that can be developed, limiting our opportunity to deliver affordable homes. By allowing for modest increases in density within the residential zones recommended in the proposal, it would open an opportunity not only for PCRI, but the market as a whole to provide homes for even more families when it comes to more families. When it comes to housing, every unit really does count. That is why we support the proposals put forth in the residential infill project and see opportunities to further strengthen support for affordable housing development through the proposal. We think it is important to incentivize affordable and accessible homes to reflect the needs of the Portland community.
that we recommend reasonable density bonuses for permanently affordable and accessible units to be added back into the proposal. With these additions, the residential infill proposal can play an important role in providing much-needed affordable housing for our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
The next three are Ted Labby, Al Ellis, and David Scholhammer, 20 and 21, and they'll be followed by Maria T. Mai, Merrill Reddish, and Allison Marchi, 22 and 23.
Okay, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to squeeze me in. I have to pick up my daughter here in a few minutes. My name is Ted Labby, and I reside in the Kearns neighborhood, and today I'm testifying on behalf of DPAVE, a Portland nonprofit that promotes interstitial green space in the city. In general, I want to support the direction of the residential infill project, but I have a few concerns and suggestions moving forward. We support changes recommended by Portland for Everyone strongly to extend the housing opportunity overlay zone to all residential zones citywide, offer incentives for development of affordable units, promote housing that is adaptable and accessible for people of all ages and mobilities, and what I'm going to talk about more today is incentivize on-site tree preservation. Carefully crafted zoning code revisions can promote more affordable housing and preserve neighborhood character, and also help the city with other worthy goals like tree preservation. The details of how the rules get written matter. Much of the public's concern with teardowns, redevelopment, and loss of neighborhood character is related to the loss of big trees in the neighborhoods. So how the residential infill project addresses tree preservation is an important detail to get right. We know from the recently completed citywide tree inventory that we're losing large form trees, which are being replaced by small and medium form trees with negative long-term consequences for the urban forest canopy. Although the urban forest is trending upwards, most of our available tree planting sites are too narrow or constrained by overhead wires to support large form trees. These two facts elevate the importance of preserving on-site large trees, particularly in residential yards. Title 11 tree preservation reforms offered some improved tools, but more work remains to be done. I'd like to recommend that you give careful consideration to your own Urban Forestry Commission's suggestions on the RIP, and those include three things, which I only have time to run through. Allow an additional dwelling unit in exchange for preservation of one or more large, healthy trees greater than 20 inches of diameter. Allow for flexible lot line setbacks in exchange for preservation of one or more large, healthy trees. And lastly, most importantly, a full waiver for on-site parking requirements to preserve big trees. Tree preservation can't continue to be an afterthought. We need to get tree-friendly designs into city staff thinking about tree-friendly designs up front. Look forward to working with you further as we continue to refine the residential infill project. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Ted, I don't want you to miss your daughter, but quick question. In terms of extending the overlay citywide, the recommendation before us specifically exempts the David Douglas School District. What are your thoughts about that?
I'm going with
carved it out, even if it was to be extended. They've carved out that district.
I'm going with the Portland for Everyone because I think that sets a very dangerous precedent that school districts could throw this up as a barrier for this kind of thoughtful infill development. This is not some kind of overwhelming density. I live in a really thriving neighborhood, Buckman or Kearns, and the original Restaurant Row on Northeast 28th would not have happened without the mix of housing types that we have in that neighborhood. I would argue it would not have happened, and that's all of Portland's now thriving food scene. It just probably wouldn't have happened if we didn't have that mix of housing types in Kearns. So
thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Hi, my name's Al Ellis, and a few years ago when I was president of the Beaumont-Wilshire Neighborhood Association, I responded to residents' concerns over the growing number of demolitions of single-family homes and the environmental fallout from the demolitions with the creation of a grassroots organization that we called United Neighborhoods for Reform. The idea was to see if the same concerns were shared by other neighborhoods. And our basic premise in our resolution, preservation of existing affordable housing is a citywide concern, eventually got endorsed by 43 neighborhoods representing over half the population of the city. Now, it's a concern that extends far beyond my backyard or your backyard, my block or your block. It's one shared by residents across the city. But preservation of viable existing homes does not necessarily preclude construction of additional housing units to accommodate increased density needs. The critical factor is context. An adoption of the BPS middle housing proposal would have the unintended consequence of opening the door for developers to demolish homes that are most affordable for entry-level buyers, like my grown children and your grown children. There's a demand for these entry-level homes that are much more affordable than the new homes that are being constructed that are, almost $1 million in price. So it's important to preserve these homes. And by the same token, it's also important to expand the choices for others, as in the duplexes and the triplexes. But to build those duplexes and triplexes at the expense of the existing neighborhood is really destroying the village to save it, which I think would be a huge mistake, an irreversible mistake. So we urge the council to adopt a policy in which density needs can be addressed without having to bulldoze away the very character that has made Portland such a desirable place to live in the first place. A few weeks ago, I went to a forum where there was a representative from Los Angeles, and they're grappling with the same issues that we're grappling with today. And their approach is not to lump all the neighborhoods together with saying that with one middle housing policy, but to give neighborhoods over a dozen choices, many different choices, and neighborhoods can opt to have a middle housing policy as is being suggested by BPS, or they can say, we think it's really important to preserve the existing neighborhood. So that's something you might consider. Thank you.
Again, David, we're going to want to hear, Al, from you and others that are involved in this. I mean, back to my example, we live in an old house. If we converted our garage to an ADU and converted the house to a duplex that had a single door, I think most of our neighbors would say, hooray, great old house preserved, right? We don't have to do that to accommodate our neighbors on a short-term basis, as I mentioned. But so the question of the incentives and disincentives in this package the intent of this package was in part to give homeowners like me an incentive to keep that building there. I think that piece of this, I'm surprised.
I
we probably have
that.
complete agreement about that piece.
Right.
Then the question is, we've had duplexes on corners for quite a while allowable. Is that okay? Can we go any farther than that? And then instead of a duplex, how about a triplex? I mean, we've got degrees of change here and incentives to keep and perhaps incentives to demolish, and I don't want any incentives to demolish. So, the tuning of this with your and other activists' recommendations is very important.
Mayor, can I just jump on that for a second? Al, perhaps you could, in a follow-up writing to us, you said unintended consequence, and so I'll just I'll pose the question and ask you it maybe in writing in an email just to give us your guidance. So, I used to be roughly your neighbor, and the houses you're talking about are the bungalows and the smaller bungalows in the Grant Park, Hollywood, Alameda area that are some of them are like 1,200 square feet. They're very efficient. I'm now a renter, and I live in an apartment of about 1,100 square feet with my family, so it's compact living, but I get to walk to work. But of those 1,200, 1,300-foot bungalows, they were once upon a time the affordable housing in the neighborhood. And I've seen over time them demolished, and in the footprint comes a monster house about, with 3 times the square footage. So when you say the unintended consequence might be to demolish those sort of starter homes, and there are a lot of those starter homes in 97212 in that vicinity, would you just spell out what events could occur that could have that unintended consequence?
What we're worried about well, what we're worried about is if this were adopted, that this would be kind of a sanctioned this would be a sanctioned policy by the city council to increase the number of duplexes and triplexes, et cetera, to accommodate greater density. And with this kind of council-sanctioned approach, we think developers would be very anxious to get in there and to convince people, as they're doing right now, they're convincing people to sell their homes, give them a good price, and then build the huge homes that are not compatible with the character. We're afraid the same thing would happen in terms of building the triplexes and duplexes, et cetera. We're not opposed to, building these things. We just don't want to destroy the existing neighborhoods.
And
as a
your fear
result.
is that's the stock of quote-unquote affordable starter homes, although we've established they're not that affordable, but they're 400,000 plus or minus.
If you're looking for a home,
in comparative terms in that zip code and replacing it with an affordable rental, but that's the trade-off you want us to grapple with.
Yeah, if the rental is going to be affordable.
Well, that's why the economic report and your and other people's subsequent assistance and specifics about this is going to help, because we've had 700 houses demolished in the last 3 years. My working assumption is most of those, well, I know we've got the breakdown. Quite a few of those were demolished for one-for-one replacements with bigger houses. I'll go back and check, but I think very few of those were demolished in order to build a corner duplex. So again, we've got the ability, we've had it for 15 years to do a corner duplex. So I'm not sure we got it right here, but I don't see the boogeyman of all these houses getting turned into duplexes, given that about every 8th or 10th house has been vulnerable to that all along, and those aren't necessarily the houses that are getting demolished. The one next door to you got demolished, and it was the middle of the block, and it didn't get turned into a duplex, it got turned into a great big house. So, we've got some data here, of what's actually happened over the last ever many years you want to look at. You can go all the way back to the 1989 report if you want, but we've got data about what's happened.
Well,
and we've got data about how many lots are zoned for duplexes. And
You're
then
also part of the BPS proposal is on scale. And so if this were adopted, then the developers would not be constructing the huge homes.
Right.
They wouldn't be able to.
Right.
So, and that wouldn't be as profitable. So we're just thinking that the other, the alternatives, the various, whether they be duplexes, triplexes, or others, would be something they would turn to in order to make we're talking about making a profit,
Right,
one way
of
or
course,
another.
Of course, yeah, and again, I want to read the economic report more closely, but I don't think developers are tearing down houses because they are inherently evil people. I think they're tearing down houses because it's profitable to do so and replace them with a much bigger house. So the 2,500 foot ceiling, to me, I believe will be a big damping down factor, regardless of the contents of that 2,500 square foot building.
That's our hope.
Yeah.
But again, we're concerned about the middle housing and the housing that not the huge homes that would be coming in, because they wouldn't be coming in, but other housing and more demolitions.
Thank you.
Sir, can I ask the same question I asked someone else earlier? Which do you think is worse? And you could say they're both bad, but which is worse? Knocking down a 1,500 square foot house and replacing it with one 3,500 square foot house, or knocking down a 1,500 square foot house and replacing it with two 1,250 square foot duplexes?
Well, what we would prefer is that homes not be knocked down.
Right.
And that
course.
you
So
would
would we.
find,
So would we.
areas of the city, to the east perhaps, where you would not have to destroy existing homes in order to build new structures.
But if you had to choose, which do you think is worse?
Pardon?
But if you had to choose, which do you think is worse?
Oh, I don't know. I think it would be a very difficult. It's a very difficult question. I think it would be a dilemma.
That's what we got here. Thanks, Al. Appreciate it. Keep it coming. Welcome.
I am David Scholhammer, and I chair the Land Use Committee for the Selwood Moreland Improvement League, better known as SMILE. Our neighborhood is experiencing phenomenal growth. In 2014, we had about 6,000 housing units in the neighborhood. We presently have 1,233 housing units under development, a 21% increase. Most of this growth is happening in our commercial corridors, and we have 2.8 miles of commercial corridor. Given this context of phenomenal growth in our neighborhood, we believe that there is insufficient justification for the proposed density increase in our single-family zones. We question whether single-family to multifamily conversion is needed to accommodate future growth in our neighborhood. We believe that a better approach would be to estimate the housing demand in our neighborhood and then to determine the ability of existing zoning and infrastructure to accommodate that demand. This should be a holistic approach that considers commercial, multifamily, and single-family zones together. While we oppose the density increase, we support the proposals to limit the scale of houses. One concern we do have is with the R2.5 zone. There, the proposed floor area ratio is 0.7 to 1. This would allow a 3,500 square foot single-family house to be built on a standard 5,000 square foot lot. We also have a lot of lots that are just under 5,000 square feet. So we're concerned that this would become the McMansion zone essentially in our neighborhood with these oversized houses. We believe that a solution to this would be to establish a maximum floor area ratio of 0.5 to 1 per unit in that zone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you both. Okay.
Next three are Maria T. Mai, Merrill Reddish, and Allison Marchi. That's 22, 23, and 47 has to leave. And sorry, they'll be followed by Marty Suchek, Jim Peterson, and Gabrielle Hayden, 24, 25, and 26.
Okay. I'm sorry, I don't remember who's first, but go ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon, Mayor Hales, Commissioners. My name is Maria T. Mai, and I am here to address an issue that I spoke about 20 years ago, and that was during the Southwest Community Comp Plan. What you've heard a lot about is housing types, sizes, and characteristics. What you haven't heard about is the pervious surface areas and loss of pervious surface areas to impervious surface areas. The planning report needs to address the footprint of these pervious surface areas. Across the city, developers are gobbling up small bungalows, and as you said, Mayor Hales, to the tune of 700. What this means is McMansions, duplexes, all these other types of homes that people are talking about are being built, and they're being built out to the lot, maximize the lot line. What is not being considered is the pervious surface areas and the areas that are for open space, big trees for wildlife, urban wildlife habitat. And what we need to do is to consider these pervious surface areas. And I get it. It doesn't pencil out for a developer to buy a small bungalow at $450,000 and build a small house. They need to build something that's going to be $700,000 or more to pencil out. So the cost of impervious surface areas is lost. So what my ask to you is this, is that you charge BES and the Planning Bureau to draft an ordinance that incentivizes developers to subscribe to a 1-to-3 ratio of structure to open space and thus pervious surface areas. So what that looks like is the house is one part of the lot, the other part is 3 parts, open space and pervious surface areas, and preserving the big trees and open space for children and others just to have open space to play and live. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor Hales and City Council members. My name is Merrill Reddish. I'm here on behalf of the Urban Forestry Commission, and since Ted Labby shared the Urban Forestry Commission's recommendation, I will not duplicate that, but I just wanted to go on the record and underscore that providing more flexibility and incentives to developers as part of this project is something that we want to recommend. We're concerned, of course, about the loss of large trees and preserving large trees as part of this project is one of our key goals. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Allison Markey Young, and I'm speaking on behalf of a friend of mine who's unable to make it because of childcare. And I would like to say that I'm speaking on behalf, in general, of perhaps a younger generation, because there's not a lot of us who have the luxury of attending meetings like this. So this is her letter to you. I'm 33-year-old native Oregonian who grew up in West Lynn, moved to Portland, and who desires to remain in this community. I have built friendships, have family, have worked to better our community. She spent a year working with low-income students in AmeriCorps. When my husband and I decided to have a child, we began looking for housing options. Our current apartment is so poorly insulated that in the winter, olive oil becomes solid at room temperature. And unless they spend a great deal of money on electricity, they can't keep their home heated properly. As adults, they can brave the cold, but it's not an option now that they have an infant. In the 10 years since my husband and I married and moved into the Southwest Portland neighborhood of Multnomah Village, rent in Portland and the surrounding area has doubled. As a rule of thumb, experts say one should spend 30% of their earnings on housing. My husband and I choose teaching as our profession, and since it requires a master's, their loans make spending 30% unrealistic. When they first looked for housing, discovered that the average cost of rent for one bedroom, and they need two with the baby, was around $1,500 to $1,600. It means that they could not afford to move. Even though her husband's a middle school teacher, she's a substitute teacher, they do not make enough money to afford this kind of rent. They looked at surrounding areas around the city and discovered that it's the same cost everywhere. She hopes you'll take the testimony into consideration today. As a family of three with a teacher's salary combined with a substitute salary, they cannot afford to live in this city. And it's a very real problem with our housing options. So they're writing in support of RIP and greater housing options so that they can stay in their community with a more diverse chance at staying.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. If you want to leave us a letter, she can make copies for us.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Next three are Marty Suchek, Jim Peterson, and Gabrielle Hayden. And they'll be followed by 27, 28, and 29, Alan De La Torre, Tony Jordan, and Jim Labby.
Okay, good afternoon. Why don't you go ahead while they're getting settled.
All right. My name is Gabrielle Hayden. I'm a member of the Overlook Neighborhood Association, though I don't speak for them here. I was born in a commune/house share in Northwest Portland, and I grew up in Boring. And I loved my chickens and pony, but I hated feeling isolated and depending on my parents for rides. I strongly support residential infill and the revisions suggested by Portland for Everyone. Neighborhood character is about people first and about building second. When my wife and I purchased our very small, but my own experience offers a perfect case study for why this plan actually supports both elements of preserving neighborhood character. When my wife and I purchased our very small, dilapidated 1924 home, all the other prospective buyers, according to our realtor, were developers planning to scrape and build a McMansion. 2 years and thousands of DIY hours later, our 672 square foot one-bedroom home is still not worth much more than the land it's built on. Allowing infill development would reward us personally financially for rescuing this small home from demolition by allowing further development on our land. Unlike current rules, it would also do so in a way that would allow another young family to live the Portland dream of a residential neighborhood with chickens and walkability both. It would not house the truly poor, but it would help maintain the livability that has drawn tech startups and other economic vitality to our city, which has trickle-down effects, however incomplete, and it would maintain the neighborhood character in the most essential way possible by keeping both our beautiful old homes and the scrappy DIY spirit of Portland alive.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
You could put an ADU on it.
We could, but it's not the same.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm here for the Multnomah Neighborhood Association, but I want to say something.
Marty, put your name in the record, please.
Oh, Marty Suchet. I think Carly knows. I want to say something about this hearing that makes me very sad, because the subtext of this hearing reflects the polarization of this election and this country. The people who have I love housing choices, I got one of these because I think they're cool. Some of the language is that way. Somebody just said young, we're the young people. Even the concept report says a certain demographic doesn't like this very flawed plan, what I think, and a very flawed survey, and a small one. What is hard for me is that those of us who don't have buttons and are speaking for our neighborhoods, which Multnomah used to be affordable, is not affordable anymore. We just heard that. We do not oppose middle housing. We have a lot of it. We've had a lot of development of it. We oppose the as appropriate. The man from Beaumont and Whistler said that there was somebody who had several different plans for each neighborhood. That's what should happen. And I really feel insulted by people who say, like the young man who benefits from writing a report and is on the planning commission that passes the report. He said, neighborhood character is code for exclusionary housing. And that's not true. And that's an insult to older people who embrace the millennials that are coming into our neighborhood. What Multnomah has, or did have, it has a lot of diversity. It has neighborhood house, it has a new neighborhood house development for child development, it has the Southwest Community Clinic for low-income folks right in the heart of it. It has Meals on Wheels, and when they came, we tried to encourage them to build to 5 stories so that people could live above that they were in a hurry and they didn't quite understand vertical housing then. Multnomah should not have this overlay, because this overlay goes over the whole thing. And what it is spot zoning on steroids, as you said in the work session, is social engineering. I am not an old fogey. I'm not a certain demographic. I'm older. I have some wisdom. I behave better than I used to.
You do, Marty.
Yes.
Hopefully we all do, Marty. Thank
And
you.
I was a civil rights advocate and an anti-war advocate when I was a youngster. I have a lot in common with these folks.
When that young woman said she was speaking for younger people, I assumed she was saying people 60 and younger. So
Okay,
I-
thank you, Commissioner.
I brought my own.
So
my
you
own-
would be
I brought my own baggage
No.
into that conversation. But also, I never used the word social engineering, but I have taken a lot of meetings from people on both sides of this issue. And I have been raising questions about the
I know you
overlay.
have.
Well, I want to understand it better. And I've had people make strong cases on either side, and it's unfortunately a feature of my legal training that I try to understand it and ask questions to test assumptions. But I never said social engineering.
Okay.
But I do. It does look very broad to me, and it does look like it could be accomplished through another mechanism, like
Yeah.
a zoning change. And I want to understand those trade-offs.
It shouldn't be just as appropriate. Who says what appropriate is? The Bureau of Planning? Well, sometimes their judgment has some shortcomings.
Can I just say something else about what you said earlier about the tone of the hearing? Maybe it's because we do this so often. There's 2 features about this hearing that I'll just note. One is that it's a peaceful setting where
Yeah.
people are making passionate arguments. And 2 is, in a city experiencing growing pains, we're getting a sense of big disagreements about how we do certain things. But just from my perspective, Mayor, this is a civil hearing.
Oh, it is too.
And I actually have found it extraordinarily substantive. And I'm going to run out of paper soon in terms of the things people are saying. So I'm sorry you feel
No,
put upon by others.
I do not feel put upon. I just see this divide of people who are wearing badges. I love housing choices, and so do I, and the characterization of people loving how their neighborhood looks.
Oh, fair
Some
enough,
of-
Marty, but
Okay.
badges and signs are fine, but appreciate your point.
All
But I
right,
think we have
we
a
don't
long way
even, we don't want to be a center, we don't even want to be a corridor, we want to be a main street, and we want housing to be specific, as you said.
So again, back to the 3 choices of do this, do nothing, do something else. I want to hear from you, not just today, but subsequently.
Okay.
If you just want
I
us to
think
drop this, that's one.
No,
thing.
I don't.
Because
I
I
don't,
think parts of
because-
this are something that you would support, but we need to
Exactly.
hear which parts you like and which parts you
All right,
you can't
I'll
live
do
with.
that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Actually, that's one question. Ms. Simchak, I know Commissioner Fish doesn't like the term, but isn't all zoning social engineering? Single-family zoning is social engineering, saying we only want people living in
Well,
single-family
I'm not
houses?
saying, I'm not saying that. I would just, it's using a chainsaw when a butter knife might work better. It is ham-handed and, you just put it on. And we do have a lot of very good developers, but we have some that are just tearing things down, affordable small units, small housing bungalows that millennials want, and just maximizing their profit. We are displacing middle income and low income people
That's why we're here. I mean, another thing I guess I want to put into the mix here, and Jim, you can comment on this, and others can as well, as we're hearing a plea for customizing this to neighbors.
Yes.
Not closed to that, okay? But we got to have something that's administratable.
Right.
So if you
So
tell us-
semi-customized.
so if you tell us if you tell us we should customize it, give us at least some thoughts about how we could do that. Because again, the duplex thing has been citywide on
Well,
R5.
Yeah, and we have maybe a half a dozen corners that have triplexes and one has an ADU,
Yeah.
and it works.
Yeah.
One of them is pretty ugly, but
So we didn't customize that, and
yeah.
it worked out. So-
Well, I think you had before the housing crisis, you had a lot of seasoned planners who helped some builders do things really well.
We also had a SDC waiver. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Jim Peterson. I'm also from the Multnomah Neighborhood Association. And I'm the point person on some objections to the comprehensive plan, the policies that were adopted June 15th. And we're waiting for the city to put 20,000 pages of documents in order and submit them to the city, or submit them to the state. And at that time, after they get an order, there'll be a notice sent to everybody who testified. And we've hired the services of Evan Fowler, a planner from Eugene, and he's drafted our objections. They're being reviewed by two of the best land use attorneys in the city to make them stronger. And one of our objections is on the middle housing amendment, and we intend to take this all away. And the reason we are is that this, if you look at the yellow overlay, it encompasses the whole neighborhood, all of Multnomah. And that basically zones out all the single-family houses. And right now, they're being demolished at a relatively high rate under the current zoning. And that's what this project was supposed to help prevent. And what's going to happen, what's being proposed will increase that dramatically. And what's happening, the implementation has been put on a fast track, and the policies have not even been approved by the state. The amount of time and cost of the implementation will not be a factor on the merits of our objections. The original analysis provided by M&A early on in the comp plan process showed that we had a 28% increase in capacity before they added all the bonuses to the mixed-use housing. This capacity was added mainly in the mixed-use zones along Barber Boulevard, and we were notified by the staff that the single-family housing would not be affected. The gross scenario report projects 11,000 housing units will be developed in all of Southwest Portland between now and 2035, and Multnomah is supposed to get 11% of that growth. We have more than enough capacity. There's no reason to add this extra capacity. This would be considered market factor. Market factor is some very interesting case law before LUBA was formed. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
We also have Habitat for Humanity houses, which are cool.
Right. Yes,
In
you
the
do.
right side.
Yes, you do. So let's do a process check here. I think there are a few people, Carla just alerted me, there are a few people who are going to be unable to come back to our second hearing. Is that right?
Correct.
So we might, if we can, extend the courtesy to let them speak first, and I think we're going to lose a quorum in about 15 minutes. Is that right? What's the?
Yeah, this was originally going to end at 4. We've extended it. You asked to create the flexibility of 4:30. I have to go in a couple of minutes.
Okay.
But that won't, Steve, can you stick around for
I was
50?
planning to stay till 5.
That work to you?
Okay,
Okay,
so
so
we
the
have
three
a
of us
quorum.
can stay till 5 and continue hearing to then. So let's take people that for some reason can't come back at our next hearing, and we'll keep chipping down the list.
And Maureen Anderson, if you want to come on up, she has a small child.
Yes,
And
she
then-
does.
Yeah, and then anybody who has signed up and is not able to come back on the 16th.
Yeah, and we'll still try to get to more of you as well. So why don't you just sit in the first rows there, and we'll, or if you're not able to sit right away, and we'll get you up here as soon as we can. Go ahead.
And the award is having the youngest presenter today.
Yes,
so
all right.
All she has to do is put her name in the record, or his name in the record, and just
Oh, it's in there. Yeah, okay. Commissioners, my name is Maureen Anderson. I live at 924 Northeast 65th Avenue, Unit B in Portland. I work as a night shift nurse at OHSU. This is my son Barney. He is 2 months old yesterday.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm here in support of re-legalizing small housing units as part of the residential infill project. 18 months ago, my now husband and I started looking for a home of our own. We have little time to spare for yard work and no interest in more than 1,000 square feet. More important to us was to live near public transit, affordable groceries, and people we knew. As anyone who's tried to relocate within Portland in the last few years knows, maybe including you, Commissioner Fish, the city has few options for middle-income families who want to prioritize proximity over space. We considered old freestanding homes that were on the edge of our price range and the outskirts of our commute tolerance simply because they were among the few physically small and therefore relatively affordable available at all. Fortunately, backyard cottages are legal in Portland, so instead of buying a home we didn't want, we ended up going in with our former housemates to finance an 800 square foot ADU in their backyard. Because Portland made our little home legal, we didn't have to bid on a home bigger than we wanted, a bid that might have priced out some other family that truly needed that extra space. I think some people you're hearing from today are under the impression that legalizing duplexes, triplexes, and backyard cottages in more situations would lead to the rapid demolition of freestanding homes. I'm happy to say that our neighborhood proves this is not the case. Much of our corner of North Tabor near the Max has been designated R1, R2, and R2.5 for 20 years, and most of the homes on this land are still freestanding and decades old. The difference is that some are not. We have a mix of duplexes, triplexes, little old detached cottages, and classic bungalows mixed pleasantly together. Some properties turn over and redevelop just like in any city, but most haven't. I'm glad that when one does, it's usually been replaced by 2 small homes instead of 1 giant one. And that's the final message I'd leave you with. I hope Barney will grow up in a neighborhood like the ones I grew up in as the daughter of a single mom, those where people of many backgrounds and incomes and ages and educations can live together. That's the nation we desperately need. That's the Portland I love, and that's the Portland that the residential infill project can help preserve. Thank you.
Thank you. For those of us who helped create the ADU option, you, Barney, and your husband are exactly who we had in mind. Thank you. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Jacob Sweet, and I first of all want to thank you guys for allowing me to participate in this process. I'm here to talk about the intersection of affordability and housing choices. Mayor Hales, earlier today, you said that these are 2 separate issues, and they are, but I think that they are more completely intertwined, right? And I think that this proposal that's on the table is going to do some work to address them. I'm a foreclosure prevention counselor with Hacienda Community Development Corporation, and I work with a variety of people facing financial hardships, medical hardships, and generally life hitting them in the face. And we see a lot of good results. However, we see plenty of bad results as well. And by that, I mean people who either are forced to sell their homes or are foreclosed on. These people don't have a housing choice in this city. By and large, what I see is either they go directly into homelessness or they are displaced outside of Portland. They simply can't afford to rent here once they lose their home. I don't believe that they have a housing choice. On the other side of my organization, we help people to buy homes. This is largely Portland's Hispanic community. These people come to our office, and our counselors, of which I'm not one, but I'm speaking on their behalf. The counselors themselves call themselves dream breakers, because when they come in, they're below 80% median income and can't afford to buy within the Portland city limits. So these people as well do not have a housing choice necessarily. Finally, I'm going to talk about myself. I'm currently living in a 3-bedroom house with 4 roommates besides myself. I live in an illegal room in a basement, and this is so that I can afford to live in Portland. This is so that I can do the good work that I do. So what I'm asking of you is that you take a hard look at this proposal as it relates to housing choices and affordability, so that not only the clients I've spoken of, but people such as myself doing good work in the city can afford to continue doing that good work and actually live here.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Hello, I'm Peggy Moretti. I'm here representing Restore Oregon, and I have submitted written testimony, so I will just summarize a few of my points. Our organization has been tracking residential demolitions for several years, and our analysis reflects, by the way, that for every 1 unit demolished right now, we're only getting 1.4 new units. So we're not getting much for all the demolition that has been going on around the city. Like you said, there haven't been a bunch of duplexes built for all those demolitions. We're concerned about how, of course, we support affordable housing. Of course, we support choices. But what we're very concerned about is that the morphing of this project into something that's pretty much exclusively about affordability, but with no proof that these proposals are actually going to affect affordability. And that concerns us very much. We think that we have a potential here to do as much harm as good, and we better know which way it's going to go before we enact this thing. There are points we think are fine. They're great. The limited size and scale and massing, adding ADUs, particularly the conversion of existing, interior conversions of existing historic homes. But we feel very strongly that right now there are 2 big shortfalls in the proposal as it stands. One, there's utterly insufficient incentives to retain existing houses. We can't just do this on a hope and a prayer. Our proposal is that the new development of middle housing be restricted to vacant lots or lots where the existing house is less than 50 years old. That we waive system development fees, but only for projects that retain the existing house. That existing residential structures be allowed greater flexibility for those interior conversions without triggering a whole bunch of commercial building code compliance. And that maybe we allow additional ADUs on properties that are designated historic, since design would be subject to review and we could be more assured of compatibility. The other point we're very concerned about is the lack of any context-specific design standards. What's going to keep our neighborhoods from becoming a dense, cheap mishmash of ugly? Restore Oregon would therefore recommend creating very clear, simple, context-specific design guidelines, such as they're using in Denver and other cities. We challenge the advisability of flag lots, because I've never seen one that didn't look really, really weird. And this idea of 3-story skinny houses is just too ugly. And I think we need to set an absolute maximum on the FAR. It's good to bonus and all that, but at some point we've got to hit a cap. So I guess overall, we think this is a half-baked proposal right now. It's good and it's bad, or it has a potential for good and bad, but we need to really, really make sure we have thought everything through, and that in our kind of mad dash towards affordability at all costs, we don't make mistakes that are similar to what was made back in the 1960s, when people thought that urban renewal back then was the cure to society's ills. And today we are still mourning the loss of neighborhoods that were destroyed with good intentions back then. So yeah, we need to add density, we need affordable housing, but let's make sure that we are doing this in the right way. And let's make sure that these decisions are based on sound evidence, proven results, examples we can look at, see pictures of, and that we respect our heritage and character of these neighborhoods in the process.
Oh, Peggy, thank you very much. You say you've got written testimony. I haven't seen it yet. That's okay. I will see it. But did you put your recommendations that you just iterated in that testimony, those points you were making? Excellent. Thank you. I want to take a look at that. Thank you very much. Thank you both. Okay, let's take anyone else that's here that will have a difficulty coming back for the next hearing, and then we'll see how many we have left after that. Come on up. Welcome. Go ahead.
All right. Mayor Hales and Commissioners, my name is Roberta Yambasu. I am the Chair of Elders in Action, the Senior Advisory Council for both Multnomah County and the city. I am concerned about the residential infill project concept report, but for a different reason than most of the people today are. While the report acknowledges that accessible housing is a priority need, it fails to mention accessible housing in the policy proposals. This is a glaring omission, and a mission which needs to be corrected. The Portland City Council has the opportunity to establish progressive housing standards for the next generations. As an age-friendly city, Portland needs to ensure that all new housing is both visitable and accessible. We have an aging population that will be an increasingly larger segment of the population every year. People are living longer, and baby boomers are reaching their elder years. We want our citizens to be able to age in place. There is no excuse for not taking the actions that would enable them to do so. We must require all new housing to be accessible. Doing so will make our city a better place to live for all people, not just for those currently needing accessible housing, but for those that will need it in the future. We have to plan for that future. As an example, when I needed to replace my crumbling sidewalk, I made that investment. Instead of replacing the sidewalk, I installed a concrete ramp. I don't need it now, but I might someday, and if I don't, my friends and family might. As a citizen and a consumer, I urge you to make Portland a leader in housing policy and include both affordability and accessibility as requirements for all new housing. Doing so is an investment in a livable Portland for all ages. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Hello, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Tony Jordan. I'm with Portlanders for Parking Reform. Portlanders for Parking Reform supports abundant, diverse, and affordable housing options in every neighborhood. We encourage City Council to support the residential infill project's recommended concepts and policies that will create more missing middle housing in every neighborhood in the city. Currently, Portland's housing options are limited and increasingly unaffordable. Many people are forced to move further away from the neighborhoods that are accessible by foot, bike, and transit, and as a result, they become more car dependent. If we want to meet our 2035 transportation and climate goals and build active, healthy, and inclusive communities, we must provide diverse housing options in every neighborhood to allow more access to transportation choices and economic opportunities. In general, we believe that the project concept report is heading in the right direction. Specifically, we strongly support the following recommended concepts. Recommendation 4, allow more housing types in selected areas. Recommendation 7, provide added flexibility for retaining existing houses, although we think that you need to exempt internal conversions from parking requirements, because if you have a big house that you need to subdivide, it's going to be hard to find 3 or 4 parking spaces on that lot. And recommendation 10, revise parking rules for housing on narrow lots citywide. We believe that there are some areas we can do better. Exempt parking requirements is an incentive for affordable housing units. Low-income people are more likely to use transit and not own a car. Infill development that provides affordable housing should be exempt from parking requirements. You should offer parking exemptions for tree preservation. We think that the housing choice option should be in all areas of the city. Don't exempt some areas, and eliminate parking requirements for all future infill and manage parking with pricing. Bundling parking and housing increases the cost of development and forces people who don't own cars to pay higher housing costs for parking they don't use. The city is already developing better parking management tools such as residential permits and transportation demand management incentives to more effectively manage residential parking demand. So we should eliminate those going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Welcome.
Good afternoon. I'm Rick Michelson, and I'm another one of the committee members that was on the committee in 1989. So Charlie and I have been working on this for a long, long time.
We sure have.
I was also a RIPSAP member, and while I have issues with many, many things in the report, I'm only going to address one anomaly or problem today. And that's the fact that as developed, this proposal would allow more housing units in the R5 zone than are allowed in the R2 zone. That's an anomaly I think we can't continue to have. In effect, every lot is allowed to have 3 units, triplex on a corner, duplex plus an ADU in the middle, or single family and 2 ADUs in the middle. With ADUs now being up around 800 square feet, that's in effect another 2-bedroom apartment. It's not the small ADU we used to think about. It's a full unit. So we actually could have a 5,200 square foot footprint or in the R5 zone and only be allowed about a 5,000 square foot in the R2 zone. There's a system problem here that we have some zones that go by FAR and some that don't, but they all need to get coordinated. In effect, what we have in our zoning is an RH that has a 4-to-1 FAR and a 2-to-1 FAR. An R1 zone that has about a 1.1-to-1 FAR, 1,000 square feet units per tenant per lot. An R2 unit that allows a density of about 0.5 FAR. And now we're coming in with this R5 that allows 0.65, which is a higher FAR ratio than both the R2 and the R3. We need to fix that. Listening to a lot of testimony today, it was really like people were talking past each other. And it reminded me a lot about when we were introducing row houses here. There's a whole group of people who have this idea as a wonderful idea and only see the dreams. There's another group of people that sees the same idea and only has their fears. The people who have the dream think it's going to be adding additional units to nice housing and help us preserve housing. The other side thinks that it's really going to lead to increased demolition and fewer scale building. I think there's some truth to both of that. And what we need to do as we develop this is find a better way. And one suggestion for today, and I just thought about it today, is if we were to only allow the extra units on existing houses throughout the city, but suggest, and then pick some certain experimental areas where we would allow the proposal as written to go in, we could see whether number one, there's a demand for these additional units without tearing down houses, and number two, what would be the result in the areas where we tear down the houses. I think that's an experiment worth trying.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Rick. Thank you all. Okay, others that want to speak today? Well, we've got time. We still have some, so come on up.
And Alan De La Torre,
Oh, is Alan here? Yes. There he is. Come on up, please. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Margaret Davis. I live in Northeast Portland, and I'm with United Neighborhoods for Reform. The idea for the residential infill project came out of the United Neighborhoods for Reform demolition development resolution, and that garnered 43 endorsements from neighborhood associations citywide. UNR participated and promoted the work of the residential infill project, partly as a means to reduce demolitions. With disappointment and regret, UNR cannot support this proposal. We feel responsibility to those 43 neighborhood associations and neighbors citywide who oppose demolitions, and we can't in good conscience support something that contemplates demolitions at the scale and rate in the proposal. Hundreds of units of affordable housing, well-built and viable housing, crashed into the landfill in this building boom. Many neighborhoods that used to serve a wide range of residents are now only accessible to the wealthy. Along the way, people in the environment have been dusted with hazardous materials such as lead and asbestos, on the average almost daily. This proposal does not meet our goals, such as reducing demolitions, and it in fact subverts them. And as you will hear from our speakers throughout this testimony, nor does it meet your goals or the city's. Such destruction is avoidable and unnecessary. Higher density projects are coming in centers and corridors under the newly passed comp plan and at thousands of corner properties citywide. According to the Bureau of Planning, we have twice as much vacant land as we need to meet our density goals until 2035. Inclusionary zoning, too, will help a wider range of people share in these housing opportunities and more equitably distribute the benefits of development. Some people say it is impolitic to participate and then spurn the result. It is also impolitic to stack the composition of the committee against the grassroots charge. It is impolitic to ignore the public outcry over demolitions. It is impolitic to say this proposal reduces demolitions when it will accelerate them. There's good news. We care a lot. We can't help but feel invested in these great neighborhoods that we helped make. And we look forward to building a better city with you. But the rezoning of this project, even if it's legally defensible, it promises more the harm than good and further loss of a desirable resource, which is viable, affordable housing.
So I'm going to make the same request of you that I did as others, because you've been so involved in this, and that is 3 choices: stop now, do nothing,
adopt this as is, or are there parts of this that you like? I think so.
I think it's a do-nothing thing at this
Really?
point.
So
I'm sorry.
you're fine with the rate of demolition we have now and replacing 1,500 square foot houses with 3,500 square foot houses?
Well, the scale provisions of the proposal actually allow for, I think, buildings as big as or even bigger than are allowed now.
I'm
Because
not
they're
aware
ex-
of that. I thought 2,500 was 2,500, so.
They're excluding basements and they're excluding ADUs and excluding the bonus that's
Well,
allowed.
then maybe we have the number wrong, but I'm saying, I'm not okay with the current rate of demolition and the replacement of
I'm not
small
either.
houses with giant ones. I think you and I agree on that. I know we do. So I'm a little mystified, and I appreciated Rick's suggestion that you would say just abandon hope and stop and accept the status quo as good as it gets. I can't accept that.
There are other things that we're doing as a group, and also a lot of individuals are countering at the grassroots level this kind of work. So, for instance, I tried to help tear down Proof My Block, and that's been a very successful effort. It's been neighbor to neighbor. We plan for when we want to sell our houses and move on, making sure that they go to a real family who will live in them and not tear it down. We're attending the open houses of some of these new places that are built and warning about the effects of the hazmat that's probably in the ground. If there's families moving in, they should know that their children shouldn't play in that dirt, that they shouldn't grow vegetables and eat them. So all these things, I think, work to hopefully keep houses standing.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Welcome. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Aaron Parecki. I wanted to give my perspective as a small-time landlord. I currently own a house with a detached ADU, and both units are rented out. I don't personally have the resources to tear down a house and build a giant one in its place. So, but I do have the resources to remodel a house or subdivide a larger house into a duplex, or even build a small detached ADU. As someone who can't afford to build a new house, I'm very excited about the plan because it enables me to be able to create more housing, even just as someone who doesn't necessarily have the resources to build from scratch. So hopefully I'll be able to live in one of those myself as well. So yeah, I'm excited about these changes.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor Hales, City Council. I'm sorry if I did this out of order, but I've got some specs here that I'm going to talk about, and is it okay to give those up?
Sure,
right now?
please. Yeah, or just Carla will. Thank you.
All right, during the course of this
Put your
conversation.
name and record to it.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, Alan Delatorre, member of the RIPSAC, and wanted to talk to you first and foremost that I live in infill housing in the Overlook neighborhood. My lot used to be an apple orchard that the neighbors were really sad to see go away, but I currently am a contributing member to my community. I own the home with my wife, and we feel like that residential infill opportunity has given us a chance to live in a very important neighborhood, a neighborhood that we've chosen to live in. Just a little bit, too, about why I'm talking today. I don't want to cover all of the details around the residential infill project, but to really focus on the accessibility piece. In my current home, as in a lot of residential infill, I've got to take my daughter out of the stroller. I've got to get the groceries off of my bike in order to get in that house. This is not to mention the aging process and some of the difficulties that I'll talk about. What we're talking about is access to one's home for all ages and all abilities here. Just a little bit on the demographic imperative. We know that the 123,000 people who are going to be added to the city of Portland will include about 40 to 50% of households that have somebody age 65 and older, and about a quarter of adults in Oregon have a disability. So this is an issue that's important to us, and it's growing in importance. Data are not available for the accessibility of the single-family housing stock in the city of Portland. We don't have that. The Housing Bureau does not have that. It's something that we need, but are just not available to us. And the ADA does not cover single-family homes. So the resulting accessible development that's happening in Portland is not happening in single-family neighborhoods. A couple of things that I just want to throw out there. I support the residential infill project concept report holistically. I really think that there are a lot of good things that are in there. In particular, the quarter-mile proximity to services, high-density quality services. When we think about housing costs, we often forget about the housing plus transportation costs. That metric is 45% of our income. We need to consider that here, especially with respect to people who are frail or have a disability. I propose that you consider doing two things with this proposal. That the infill that's a result of this is actually required to be visitable. The concept of visitability has three components. One, zero-step entrance, wide halls and doors that will allow you to get a walker, a bike, a wheelchair, anything through there, and then at least a bathroom on the ground floor that somebody could come in and use. Visitability is about your neighbors and your family and everyone else in the community, not just about you. So this is an important thing for just about everyone. And the second proposal is that bonus units, density bonuses that are allowed here, meet a higher standard of accessibility. And I would also extend that actually to cottage clusters. I think that that's an opportunity for us to find an innovative solution for housing Portlanders in the future. I do want to put out the caveat that we know topographical concerns and existing structures may require some kind of exemption. So we're not against that idea, but we want to put this out there that by right development as part of this should include accessibility or at the very minimum visitability as an outcome of this project.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
That's very helpful.
Appreciate it. Thank you all. Okay, let's take some more folks. Yeah. Go ahead, please.
Shall I go? Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Rosemary Sweet, and I will be speaking today in support of the city staff's proposal to marginally increase the amount and type of housing that's permitted in the city's neighborhoods. I'll be sharing my perspective today based on approximately 20 years of work helping to create a Portland that is more just and more ecologically sound, a city that provides everyone with the benefits of a way of life that is both more satisfying and that recognizes the limits of Earth's capacity to support us. In the late 90s, I helped develop the city's green building policies, and my role there was to ensure that ecologically sound housing that was healthier and more durable and more comfortable was available to low-income residents. After that, in my work with Food Policy Council, Farmers Market Fund, and others, I worked on creating access to healthy, locally grown food for everyone, and the city responded to that need and has enacted zoning changes to make healthy food more accessible to all. Portland is now engaged in this thoughtful reconsideration of its zoning in its neighborhoods to create a city that is inclusive and that protects the earth, which after all is the only home we have. We must change our single-family zones. This proposal will allow the construction of smaller homes, slightly more numerous homes, houses that use fewer resources and that support walkable neighborhoods and local businesses. Most importantly, they offer a wider range of housing options for people who prefer smaller homes, who are living singly or as a couple, who cannot afford a detached house, and who do not want to consume more than their share of materials and energy. I consider this proposal quite modest. It offers only incremental growth in the neighborhoods. We are not talking about large apartment complexes in the middle of residential areas. And it's growth that's respectful of the neighborhood's character. While the changes are necessary for our future, they also look respectfully to our past, to a time before McMansions came into vogue, a time when duplexes and cottage clusters fit comfortably throughout the city, allowing people housing choices. On a personal note, and I'll stop there, I now live in a duplex, and in my 40s I lived in a house with an internal conversion to a second-floor apartment. These homes have been a wonderful source for me of comfort and enjoyment. They fit very nicely within the neighborhoods they were in, and I would just like to see other people have the option to live in those kinds of homes in this city. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Garrett Downen. I am a native Oregonian and Montevilla resident. Thank you for this opportunity and for working to address the housing affordability crisis. I'll keep this quick out of respect for your request, Mayor Hales, because a number of the points that I was intending on making were made by previous testimony. But I did want to add my voice and experience in support of this infill project and just testify to the need for mid-level housing. When I was house hunting myself in 2013, it was more of an endeavor than I expected. I toured 60 different homes over the course of a couple months, put in 7 different offers, 6 of which were above asking, and it needed to stretch my initial budget by 30%. But with Portland leading the country in the rate of housing price increases, that's not too bad compared to what I'm seeing people experience now, 3.5 years later. And I don't pretend that experience was a hardship compared to the experience of the many who were fighting to keep a roof over their heads. But it felt rough at the time, and I worry about the ripple effects of that shortage to people less privileged than I and my peers. In regards to those peers, I'm seeing many young professionals in their late 20s and 30s, folks who are some of the most impactful and engaged people in Portland, who work in nonprofits, in government, at B corporations, really struggle with finding a place here right now. They are, despite their privileges, I hear them pining over the idea of actually buying a home here at some point. They would love the opportunity to buy or rent in a long-term fashion a part of a duplex, triplex, or what I would now learn today are called cottage clusters. I've heard peers dreaming of that as a wonderful living environment. We would love to see more of that. So would they, and they're feeling priced out. So in summary, I support this direction and the revisions suggested by Portland from Everyone. It feels like a well-reasoned, balanced, and so necessary approach to adding modestly priced units.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor Hales, Commissioners. My name is David Sweet, and I was pleased to serve on the RIPSAC representing Central Northeast Neighbors Coalition. I want to commend BPS staff for creating an excellent process which resulted in a proposal that will preserve the integrity of our neighborhoods while providing greater housing choice and affordability. I bought my first house in Portland in 1978. I was 4 years out of college and 2 years on the job as a city field representative. That's how things were in Portland 4 decades ago. Today, no city field rep can afford to buy that house or any house in that neighborhood, or likely rent there either. Like others of my generation, I got my place on the home ownership escalator, and because I was able to buy a house then, I get to be a homeowner for the rest of my life. My adult children are not so fortunate. Like many millennials, they struggle to afford to stay in the city where they grew up. Not all the houses in my old neighborhood are owned by wealthy people. But when those houses turn over, they will be bought by wealthy people who alone can afford them. And that neighborhood and all of our other close-in neighborhoods will lose the economic and ethnic diversity that has characterized Portland for the 50 years that I've lived here. We will join the national trend toward economic segregation. It does not have to happen that way. The residential infill proposal offers us the opportunity for housing choice in Portland's great neighborhoods. While keeping the scale of new development consistent with existing houses, it will re-legalize the development of smaller, more energy efficient, and more affordable housing. It will offer options for middle-income families that are not currently available. It will allow school teachers, first responders, and shop owners the opportunity to live in the neighborhoods they serve. It will allow young families to step onto that home ownership escalator. It will offer older adults the opportunity to age in community while they downsize. In the late 1980s, I helped work on the Albina Community Plan, and along with that effort, the city created the A overlay zone, which legalized accessory dwelling units in some selected areas, a modest yet important step forward. Like the current proposal, that one created some concerned reactions about the loss of integrity of single-family neighborhoods. Yet just a few years later, the idea had won such broad acceptance that ADUs were simply allowed as a matter of right in all single-family areas. The residential infill proposal is similar, a modest yet important step forward, and like the A overlay before it, it will allow incremental, low-impact changes that move us toward equity and inclusivity. And like the A overlay, I feel confident that these changes will receive broad acceptance and will ultimately be applied to all of our single-family neighborhoods.
Thank you. I want to thank you and all the members of the committee for the huge amount of time that you put into this, and as well as all the other great testimony we've had here today. Unfortunately, I think we do have to stop now because we're going to lose a quorum. And I know there's some of you who've been waiting very patiently to speak. I'm going to put you first on the sign-up sheet for our continued hearing. So we'll make sure that you don't have to wait that long again. Thank you three very much.
And
then we do need
if you
to, I
can't
think,
come
act
back
on them.
next time, we will read everything that is sent in to us, and if you could just put in the subject line, was not able to speak on the first hearing, I'll make sure that I look for it carefully. Thank you.
And we do need to act on a motion, which I am looking for the verbiage for back in my pile, unless one of you has it handy. Let me see if I can find it. To allow us to deviate from the rules in order to have an evening hearing in addition to our afternoon hearing on the 16th. Is that good enough? Oh,
Right, we're
there's the
used to-
language.
Well done,
Thank you, Rachel. Rachel on the spot. I move to waive the 2-week notice to have a 6 p.m. session to extend the hearing on the residential infill project from 6 to 8 p.m. on November 16th. Is there a second? Okay, any discussion? Let's take a vote.
Novick,
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Saltzman. Hales.
Aye. Okay, so there'll be 2 hearings on the 16th at 2 p.m., which is when we'll, by the way, if you're signed up and you want to come back, you can sign up for either 2 p.m. or 6 p.m., and we'll put you first in either queue. So does that make sense? So we're going to have a hearing at 2, and we're going to recess for dinner, and we're going to resume at 6. So if you were here today and you want to come back and speak, you can sign up for 2 p.m. or at 6 p.m., see Rachel or Carla to facilitate that. And again, thanks for your patience in not being heard today.
I think we just need to make it clear that this hearing is continued.
Yes,
So
it
if
is
you did
continued.
get to speak today, you don't get to sign up and testify again next week.
Yeah, we are continuing the hearing to hear more testimony, and we want to ask people to continue to send written ideas into us so that when we get to the council discussion phase, we'll have not only heard testimony, but had a chance to digest all this great material that people are providing. Thank you very much, and we are recessed till tomorrow at 2 p.m.